We are here. Episode, is this 12 or 13? Is it 13?
I think so.
Okay. Episode 13 or 12, we will see. We have Casey Fruge here, father of seven
kids.
Wow.
Yep.
7 kids, marathon
Congrats.
runner,
Mm-hmm.
awesome Catholic.
Well, we'll see after some of these stories.
Yeah, he's, I was just laughing when he got here that, like, I know of him through the community, and we
Right.
know each other, but I want to know you more. I'm excited to learn about you, your wife, and family.
And I'm coming in like we just met.
Blind.
So-
Just right outside.
Yeah. Like I want to. So I have a lot to learn.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do, we're implementing the day's gospel to throw some scripture in first. Are you comfortable saying a quick prayer for us?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
awesome.
Let us pray. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that you've given to us. We thank you for all the many gifts that you've provided, and most of all, just the love that you give us and the support that you give us. Lord, we pray for all of our families right now, for our children, that we can be good examples to them, that we can mirror the image of God the Father to them. And Lord, you know our hearts and our needs better than anybody. Just pray that these words can hear you and to reach you in a way that you know exactly what it is that we can have. And Saint Joseph, we just ask for your intercessions during this time as just a wonderful example of what an earthly father should be. Amen.
Okay, thank you, brother. All right, so I'll just lead into the gospel. I believe it's Matthew 6:7 through 15. In praying, do not babble like the pagans, who think that they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him. This is how you are to pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors, and do not subject us to the final test, but deliver us from the evil one. If you forgive others their transgressions, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive your transgressions. And we can tidbit back into that as and if we need to, of how that implements into our conversation. But yeah, man, so how we kind of start these just to get people warmed up is with what's easiest to you, your story,
Sure.
How you started, how you became Catholic, cradle Catholic, whatnot, how you met your wife,
Right.
all the things. So yeah, we'll just roll.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've been enjoying the podcast. I've been listening to them and hearing all the stories. And I told my wife, I was like, yeah, Jacob asked me to come on the podcast. And she's like, oh, great. What are you going to talk about? I'm like, I have no idea, honestly, because in my mind, I am extraordinarily ordinary. I am just a normal, boring white guy, right? There's nothing.
You just mentioned St. Joseph, and
Right.
G.K. Chesterton's quote there is that God chooses ordinary men
Right.
for his extraordinary plans.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say this. So you mentioned this in the lead up. I think the most interesting part about me is that I am a husband and a father, and I'm a father of 7. And with that, I have 6 boys and 1 girl. And so the girl was 3rd on that list. So I had Abram, Andrew, and then Caroline. And it is so funny the amount of people who, when we had Caroline, and it was like, oh, okay, you have your girl, like, so you're done now, right?
Right.
And I'm like, well, they're not trading cards. I'm not trying to collect like the set here, which is always a crazy question. But in today's culture, it is funny that of all the things you're not allowed to ask, like, man, people are so bold to ask, like, hey, how many kids are you going to have?
Yeah.
Like, how many do you want? Like, just all these random stuff.
And that's the better question, right?
Right,
Because
exactly.
sometimes they're like, you know how this works,
Yeah,
right?
Right.
Well, obviously.
Obviously, I know how this works.
7 kids, 6 kids. Yeah, I think we got the hang of it by now.
Right. No, it is funny. And I joke with my wife all the time because there is an unfortunate double standard, I think, when it comes to certain things. If my wife is out in a grocery store with all of our kids, people will stop her and just be like, this is a lot of kids. Like, one, that we don't know that 7 is a lot of human beings to take care of. Like, yes, we're aware of that. Thank you. As opposed to if I'm out with all of my kids, I'm just the greatest guy in the whole world. Right. Like, just doing the simple thing of just being a dad. Yeah. But
like those girls in Beauty and the Beast are swooning over Gaston.
Yeah. I don't know about swooning, but but no, I mean it is funny though, and it does make me a little sad for her that like she doesn't get that same reaction. The amount that she, such an incredible woman and faithful woman, but
it's like this expectation of women.
Right.
Versus like, oh well, the dad shouldn't be doing that, but let's praise him.
Right.
And you gotta wonder, like, is when other women see that, are they seeing a tragedy in their own lives that they weren't able to have enough kids, that they regret not having enough kids? It's like there's a whole psychological complex happening when people see large families.
Right. I think people can't help but put themselves in that situation. And so in any situation, I think anytime you talk to somebody about something that's going on in their life and they say something that is odd or unusual to you, you immediately put yourself in that situation and you kind of get a little uncomfortable, right? And so for a lot of people, they think about having that many kids and they're just, I can't do that. There's no way.
They get anxious.
They get super anxious. And I know sometimes I'll get the when did it become difficult? Like when was the most difficult one? And I always say like 1.
Yeah.
Number 1 was the most difficult one. Like you're going from not having to worry about anybody beside your spouse, right? Who is an adult human being who has lived X amount of years already.
Feed herself.
Exactly.
Is potty trained.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
To taking care of something who has to learn how to not take. Because I mean that's basically, kids don't come out of the womb in a giving nature, right? Like learning to give is something that you have to like really work at.
Thomas Aquinas says children are born vicious.
Right.
But if you think about that analytically, right, virtue is a habit. Habits take time. They've had no time.
Right.
They're vicious.
They are. In fact, I joke all the time that, Matthew and Daniel, they're my 7-year-old and 5-year-old, and in order that's 5 and 6. So, after my daughter, we had 4 straight sons, and they're like, "What is that like?" I'm kind of like living with raccoons, honestly.
That's what Jim Gaffigan said,
right?
too.
Yeah, you just
it's like, what's it like having your 5th child? Well, it's like you're drowning and somebody throws you a baby.
Yeah, and I'll try to swim. So speaking of swimming, a couple of years ago, Daniel was 3. We had Jacob in February of that year. It was Father's Day, and Jill, my wife, made this delicious meal for me. She always does. She's such an incredible woman, and I'm so blessed to have her in my life. She made this wonderful meal, and unfortunately, I don't know if in the prep work something got in her system, but she got violently sick.
Oh.
And so in the afternoon, she was like, I just have to go to bed. Like, I'll lay down with Jacob. He's asleep. Like, I'm so sorry. It's not a big deal. It's really not. In fact, Father's Day, I think they recently did a ranking of all the holidays, and it was like Christmas 1, Mother's Day 2, Father's Day 84.
Yeah,
like it was after Arbor Day.
I was gonna say it's gotta be after
after Arbor Day.
What is Arbor Day?
Exactly. I was gonna say, Jacob, I'll give you $100 right now if you can tell me what an arbor is, because I don't even know.
That's just a question.
We used to plant trees on Arbor Day.
So, like, the fact that she does so much for me on Father's Day, I was like, you've gone above and beyond. Thank you. So I end up taking 6 of my kids to our community pool in our neighborhood. And my kids are incredible swimmers, so I'm not worried about that. Daniel's wearing his puddle jumper. But I'm sitting there and I'm talking to some friends, and all of a sudden Daniel comes up to me and he's holding a slushie. Now Daniel is 3 at the time, and today still has a speech impediment. He's in speech therapy, and so it's hard to understand him. Like I can understand him as his father. But there's no way that 16-year-old kid at the concession stand understood blue slushy. So
they're highly trained at those concessions.
Right. My thought, though, is that you just raccooned this off somebody's table. Like, you literally just saw a slushy on a table, and it's like, this is now my slushy. So I was like, Daniel, buddy, you can't just, like, where'd you get that? And he points to the concession stand. I'm like, no, there's no way. So I get out of the pool. I walk him up there. I have him. My daughter joins me. And I'm like, hey, buddy, did you just sell him a slushie? And he was like, yeah, he came up and wanted a slushie. And I'm like, you understood him that he wanted a slushie and like paid for it out of our account? And he's like, no, he had his sister with him. And I'm like, this girl right here? And he's like, no, his other sister. I'm like, this is the only sister he's got. All right, he's got 5 brothers, but he's got 1 sister. And he kind of like sticks his head out of the window and he goes, no, that girl, Jason Romero's daughter, Adele, Jacob found her, walked her over to the window, and she's sitting there eating a Twix. So I'm like, not only did you convince that guy as a 3-year-old to give you a slushie, but you paid Adele Romero a Twix bar to help you get that. Like, I'm no longer worried about you as a human being.
Yeah.
Like,
This
you
is
are good.
Jacob the youngest. Mission accomplished.
He's the second to young.
Okay.
This is Daniel. Jacob's the
Daniel.
youngest. This is Daniel.
That's awesome.
I'm like, if a Jumanji situation took over and you went out you would be fine. You would show up on the doorstep 20 years from now with a long beard, long
And a mink
hair,
coat.
looking like Jacob Zumo whenever I first met you.
This is the character in The
With the
Walking
pony.
Dead that survives to the 9th
Exactly.
season.
Like, he would be totally fine. I mean, we went skiing, and he's just the only 5-year-old on the slopes, just carrying his skis on his shoulders. Like, what's up? Just fiercely independent.
So my story of lots of kids in a swimming pool, my kids, as I've said multiple times on this podcast, are blessed with a lack of athletic ability. And we were at, the Lakinoviches, David Lakinovich?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, great family, another large family. And they had a pool in the backyard.
It's kind of like a fraternity, right? You
Yeah.
just kind of know all the other family
We
names.
sense our spidey sense, yeah. And, well, after Charlie had gotten kicked in the head by a horse because they had horses, and Charlie thought it was fun to actually play Ring Around the Pony,
Okay.
The next child was like, oh, pool. I'm going to go in that pool, fully clothed. And he walks down the steps into the pool, and at the bottom of the steps, he's a couple feet underwater, and he just stands there. And he's like, well, what do I do now? And I'm like,
Literally anything.
yeah, anything but what you're doing would be much better. Eli just stood there in the water,
Yeah.
and he's like,
Just froze.
yeah.
This is cool. This is new.
Yeah, like,
how old was he?
Maybe 4 or 5. I was obviously winning Dad of the Year award that day, that he would even get that close. But
There's so many times that happens where you're like, I'm probably not painting the picture of the blessings of having this many children right now. When you see like the amount of times that like a little old lady will come up to us after mass and be like, your family, they were so good and so well. And I'm like, what family were you watching during this mass? Like,
Trying to make us feel better, but no, woman, I'm in the trenches still.
I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
We did that. Yeah.
We survived.
So the funny thing is that when Jill will be on a retreat and all the ladies are so worried about like what's happening. Our husbands are back at home. They have all the kids. And I always joke, like, if I take my kids to mass by myself compared to my wife taking the kids to mass by herself, they know, like, they have that look to them. Like, if I look over, they're like, uh-oh, it's just him. Like, I don't know that he really cares if we live or die. So let's be on our best behavior at
Gotta
this
keep
point.
him on,
Yeah, you just
asking the question.
gotta have that little bit of
Lola to
fear,
that
right?
Fear of me
Yeah.
stage. She's just smarter than me already.
I took out the toddler the other day. Well, actually, my wife took out the toddler for Mass, and he's getting a little effective with his manipulation as well.
Yeah.
You know, Twix and slushy angle. And he was like, "Don't hit Jude. Don't hit Jude. Don't hurt Jude." And everybody else like,
nobody's going to do anything. Which is the complete opposite of what I grew up in. So, I'm 42. I was born in 1983. So
I'm born in 83. Father Todd we had on, also
There
an
you go.
83 baby.
Yeah. So elder millennial, right?
Yeah.
I'm from Eunice, Louisiana originally.
Nice.
So about 7,500 people. So I would say
Like Eunice proper or like Mowater, Glen Cook?
so most I would say until I was 11 we lived in Eunice, and then we moved about a mile outside on Highway 13 heading towards Crowley. So
All I
not
know
quite
is
to
like the-
Mowater.
Okay.
LSU Eunice baseball.
Yes.
Is that like? Am I just thinking that, or is that like their pride?
They're
Yeah.
they're like
legit.
'Cause they're-
incredible. Yeah.
Okay.
They win national championships like every year, every other year. But
Okay.
I did go there for a year. We affectionately, at the time that I went there, we called it LSU Easy. So you kind of like, you got your 4.0 there, and then you get to LSU and you just coast your way down and hope to keep
Yeah.
tops by the end of it.
Yeah.
Smart move.
But so growing up in Eunice, like during that time, like nobody, like you weren't allowed to act up in Mass because everybody knew you. So like if you got away from your parents, it didn't mean that Mr. Robert sitting behind you in the pew couldn't smack you on the head
Yeah,
for acting up.
nice.
So
Everybody's deputized.
Right,
too.
exactly.
Different tier
yeah.
of
And
community there.
there was no
Need that.
like, don't touch my baby. It was no, next time put some stank on it. Like he
Yeah.
deserves it. Like
Yeah.
make sure you get after that. So my faith journey is more of like I was so active that I wanted to do stuff. And so from the second that I was old enough to be an altar server, I did.
Yes.
Like I became an altar server. And I think I bugged them so much because every Mass that I would go to be like, do y'all need a replacement? Y'all need a replacement?
Yeah.
They
Nice.
finally just started putting me on the schedule every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so being up on the altar started, and I love how awesome our God is, that he can take even if you take a situation that starts off in a bad intention where I just wanted to be able to be active and move around in Mass, he can still mold that into something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I didn't know that I was being formed at the time, I was. And so I don't know that I necessarily being up on the altar gave me the vision of what was going on and all of the don't know exactly the word that I'm looking for, the miracle.
Cadence of the Mass.
Exactly, just the miracle of it and the cadence of it. And when I was in high school, though, we got Life Teen in Eunice at St.
I'm
Thomas
just
More.
learning what Life Teen is.
Right.
Well, but altars. Let's stay on altar sermon just a
Sure.
moment. Like, if y'all hear scratching in the background,
Mhm.
that's my oldest boy, right? My boys are. People say they're angelic on the altar, and like that's a strong term, but they are very well. Their postures, their reverence is good on the altar. In the pew, though, they are still hellacious, right? It is father-son altar serving has completely changed so much of our experience of Mass, of my ability to be a father,
Right.
to with the language of the body, right? If we're thinking theology of the body, to image reverence for my children and postures and demeanor and cadence and everything, is amazing. But just as a parenting hack, right? Like you're saying,
Get them active.
yeah, they're active in the pew because they can't sink their teeth into the Mass, right? Maria Montessori, the foundress of the Montessori method, right? I think she had an engineering or medical degree, the first woman in Italy to do that. She created this whole learning model, right? The Montessori method, Montessori preschool, about manipulatives and learning, not like, okay, this is a number 4, right? But learning in a more intuitive way. all of that, and she has a book that I republished because I think it's so important. All of that is based on altar serving, right? She grew up with the Latin Mass, where there's even more bells and smells and even more to do on the altar, right? Novus Ordo, I think we have that problem of altar servers becoming hood ornaments,
Sure.
right? And we need to bring back all those different things they can do for reverence sake. But that whole Montessori method was based on children learning about Christ through altar serving, through being able to manipulate and ring bells and bring up the dishes. And she has entire sections about how kids used to be children who would harvest the wheat, grind the wheat for Corpus Christi to make the host for Corpus Christi.
Wow.
Right? Like there are so many ways we, in a respectful liturgical way, can get kids involved so that they learn the faith in a much more fundamental way.
How old were you?
Honestly, I don't even remember.
Me either. I altar serve at San more, and I want to say it was as young as second grade, but maybe not, maybe fifth grade.
I honestly don't know. Probably fifth grade sounds
elementary.
Right. Like I feel like it's double digit numbers, so
and like
maybe 10.
Now the kids want to get First Eucharist earlier,
right?
Because they can altar serve earlier.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Matthew is like itching to get. I mean, he tries every time. I'm like, no, it's not.
Are they getting into altar serving?
Do what?
At Mercy or
no, talking about receiving communion.
Okay.
He tries. I'm like, not
you
yet,
grab
son,
for
sorry.
it?
Yeah. And he's always so sad, and I don't want him to be like to think of it in that way, and but it is just funny. I'm like, not yet. You haven't gone through the preparations and things like that, but. And I mean, right now my 13-year-old and my 11-year-old are both altar servers, and I joke with them, and I'm just like, did somebody tell you, like, make it look like you're just angry up there? Like, you can smile, you can look like you're enjoying.
And the deacon will go
so
like this to me sometimes.
They're so shy. Like, those are two of my shyer kids. And again, I think that ended with them because it's just progressively getting more and more emboldened as my younger kids get older. But
you were talking about Life Teen.
So no, it's fine. I'm glad you brought up Montessori, because like I'll see Montessori schools and I'll ask my wife like what, and she'll explain like this is different, type of learning of different things. So.
Amazing Catholic.
So Life Teen, it was more of a contemporary, get contemporary Christian music in it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I'm about 14, 15 at that time, and I hear this, and then they were like, hey, we're gonna have this conference this summer in Alexandria, Steubenville South, that we're gonna go to, and that, I will say, if I have to trace back, that is where my faith became my own, where I got to experience Christ in a way that I felt him for the first time. Bishop Sam Jacobs was the bishop at the time there. He ended up being moved to home at Thibodaux and then starting Steubenville on the Bayou down there. So Louisiana had two Steubenville South was in Alexandria, two Steubenville conferences in a tiny state. But
and about what year was Steubenville was that?
I think 1999.
Because some people listening will be like, I might have been there.
Right, yeah. No. My wife and I were at the same Steubenville at least 3 times before we met.
Wow.
And in fact, one time that we were there, I had met her boyfriend at the time the summer before, ran into him, and she was sitting next to him, and she doesn't remember the interaction, and I don't remember her sitting there. But we knew that we had to have been literally next to each other. They ended up breaking up about a month later because she was a year older than him and went to LSU, and she just felt this hey, even though this is a good relationship and he's a good man, he was a good boyfriend for her at the time, it just didn't feel like that was the right thing for her. So a month before all of that, I see her, they break up, we meet, and I'll get in that story later, but it's just funny how the Lord puts you in these situations and says, not now, not yet. Yeah, Steubenville, you had Bishop Sam Jacobs. You had Father Jose Robles Sanchez.
Yeah.
Oh, man, he was so incredible to be around it. And the stuff that sticks with you over time, like he's giving a men's talk, he's the boys' talk, and they had separated, and he's like, you got to look at that girl who only want that thing from you, and you got to look at her and be like, no way, baby. I'm like, yes, okay, like this guy, awesome. And I'm 15. I was like, whatever. Girls are everything to me at that point. And I joke, they're just like, oh, you learned how to play the guitar at 15? Like, why'd you do that? I'm like, same reason everyone learns how to play the guitar, to impress girls. That's what you do. You just, everything as a 15-year-old boy is to like attract girls. Like that is what,
that is our singular focus.
Life. So Father Mark Beard, he was such a huge part of my life for a little while, and it's crazy. I still have his contact in my phone, and I just remember hearing like when that news came out that he had tragically died in the car accident, and I was like, oh man, this is so intense. But he once said in a talk on an Acts retreat, the first look is free. And I just remember thinking like, okay, yeah, that's good. That's something that I can tell my boys, like, because if you notice, there's nothing wrong with noticing something, but when you turn back for the second time, maybe that's where it starts creeping in.
King David, right? That first look, Bathsheba.
There it is.
When he looked back.
That's when he looked back. First look's free. You get that freebie. So I went to LSUE for a year, and then I transferred to LSU here in Baton Rouge. And we used to have at Christ the King student masses on Tuesday nights at 8:15, and that was when Father Tunvu was there and Father Carville was there.
This is like 2000.
This was 2002.
Okay.
So in 2002, and I'm playing music. I had met Father Tim Hedrick actually a week before, and he had invited me to join the, it was contemporary music. So he's like,
yeah, come play the guitar. At this time?
No, he was in college at this time.
Oh,
he's a year ahead of me.
Wow.
So he graduated. He would have graduated high school in 2000 and then college in 2004.
Okay.
So
so he's close to another 83 baby too. Then.
He is, yeah. And so
Good
he
year.
invited me up there, and I was playing music in Father Tun. So after the opening song and prayer, Father Tun was like, hey, we're just new to campus. Why don't you go and introduce yourselves like to he's telling this to all the students that are there. And being a 19-year-old college man, I was, looking around church, right? I wanted to see if there was any woman there who looked like she had the capability of challenging me mentally, right? That's what we look for.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I see this row, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, they fit that bill right there. So,
any of it. Yeah.
right. So I walk across, and I introduce myself. And as I turn to go back, I hear this voice say, excuse me. And so I turn back around, and then the row behind them, there's this beautiful girl. And she just goes, where'd you get that bracelet? And I'm wearing the Steubenville South armbands. And if you're at LSU and you're wearing an armband, like I'm thinking, okay, this girl thinks I was at Bogey's last night, right? I'm like, it's actually from Steubenville South. And she just like lifts her arms up and points, and she's like, me too.
Syndicate.
So
awesome.
Jill grew up in Shreveport. So she's one of the three Catholic girls that were up there. So I got one
the
of
other
them.
two.
I got one of them. A good friend of mine got the other one, so that was good. But her youth minister and my youth minister were best friends from high school.
Wow.
And had instituted the same thing. So when you go to Steubenville South, you wear your armbands, and you just never take it off.
It has to deteriorate off. It's like a
disintegrates off after just dirt and nastiness. And
So this was like a couple years you've been wearing it?
no, this was from the previous, the one that had just happened. So
I do
this
that
was,
whenever we have
Right.
a baby.
Yeah, you
the
just leave that
medical
on.
bracelet, and it starts molding on it.
It was only like 16 months. There you go.
I was like, my wife and I, it was a competition at
Uh-huh.
first, and then I just kept doing it, and she was like, I'm not doing that anymore. Just became me and my awkward, moldy medical.
She's like, this was fun a long time ago. I don't know about this anymore. But so she did that, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I knew that I needed to get back because Mass was continuing on and I had stuff to do. But I just remember thinking, all right, I got to find this girl afterwards.
Did she think you were giving her the cold shoulder, or?
She may have. I don't know. It like if she tells a story, it's a totally different story. Like she had seen me the week before, and
she is like target acquired.
Apparently, she did. Like she hunted me. Like she had it absolutely in her scopes. And I like look if you're seeing this on video, I am not a spectacular guy by any means. I don't know what I was putting out there outside of. I thank God for this every day. Like I feel like God makes you for somebody else, and she recognized that right away and said, this is the person. Like God is telling me this is my person. This is the one that I'm going to get to heaven, and I don't know what I did to deserve that. I'm every day, like that is going to be my first question. Like, God, why am I so blessed that you gave me this woman to walk with me and to have this as part of my life? But you know, I'm grateful for that every single day. Found her after Mass, got her name. At the time, I wasn't ready to be in a relationship. I wasn't thinking about it from that way. We became friends for about a month, and I was going to do an awakening retreat in Lafayette, at ULL. And I remember thinking, if I don't tell this girl that I'm into her, that I want to start a relationship, I'm only going to think about her the entire weekend, and I'm not going to get anything out of this. So I go to her dorm room and I ask her like, hey, can you step outside with me? And as I'm talking,
how much time has passed since y'all met?
About a month.
Okay.
Yeah, about a month. And so we, this was September. So we had met in August, and this was September, middle September sometime. And as I'm talking to her, she's just like smiling and nodding, and I'm like, what are you smiling and nodding about? Like, what's going on?
Anticipated?
Like, she knew what I was going to say, and she was like, finally, you get it. Like, I've been praying about this for so long, and I was finally there, and I was like, I think we should pray about whether or not we should start a relationship. I'm really into you.
Are you like 19?
I was 19.
Dude.
And she goes, no, I already prayed about it. God said it was cool. And so we started dating at that point. And
wow.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Just
So that's
y'all's language as a 19-year-old.
I mean, that's just grace from, like I said, like sometimes you get put in these situations where you don't realize the Lord is working with you until it happens, and you can reflect back on it and be like, oh yeah, that's where it was. So.
I'm glad you had that experience, because for me, God was teaching me persistence.
Right.
Because the girls are never like, I have dreamed of you.
No other girl has ever dreamed of me. I can promise you that. Like that's divine right there. That's and if you saw my wife, you would be like, Are you sure? Is he lying? Like, I feel like he's making this story
Very
up.
beautiful.
Like she's a
tricked her,
and
right?
You're like a good on a good day. Like,
like I clean up well, but I mean, she is just this. Like I say all the time, like she is just beauty. She's not beautiful. She is beauty. And when I see her,
you have her on the show apparently.
Yeah, you do. Like, she should have been sitting right here. She's a physician. She's currently seeing patients right now, but. So after my 3 years at LSU, like when I'm graduating, I proposed to her, and this is kind of where we have, like you said, like we had been at Steubenville at the same time. Like we did retreat team together. We did all of these different ministries, and it just felt like, okay, this is going to be so easy. And our Pre-Cana pretty much was like the test, right? Where each one takes the test. And at the time, right. And I don't know if y'all had to, yeah, well, I think it was Scantron. But also it made a statement like, we will have a bank account together. I agree, I disagree, I don't know.
Yeah.
Those were the only three options.
I strongly don't agree.
Right.
It's like you lose track of what you're saying after a while. Yeah.
So those are the only three options that you have to pick from. Well, Jill and I answer everything completely compatible.
100%?
100%. Wow. Like literally, we show up to go over this with our Pre-Cana couple, and the couple looks at us and goes, we've never had a couple get 100%.
Did
And
they
we're
think you
like,
were
okay.
looking at each other's tests while you're doing it or
Yeah,
something?
they were like, we weren't. Like, we went on 2 separate days. And so they were like, so we don't have anything for y'all. Y'all are good. That was our pre-Cana. We're like, what? So like we were walking out thinking, okay, like we're high-fiving each other. We got this.
Yeah.
Like, where's our book deal?
Next 50
where's
years
our
is gonna
TV
be
show?
easy.
Like,
Yeah.
this is marriage is gonna be nothing. Like, we got this down pat. And then we got married. And it was just kind of like, wait, what's
What's
going on right now? Because, you know, we had never lived with, like, we didn't live together beforehand, and I had never lived with girl. I have an older brother. So I never even had girls, like, in my home that much. And she's here, and I don't.
So are you the tidy one? Is she the tidy one?
Oh, she's 100% the tidy one. And that's going to come full circle in a little bit when I tell you, like, where our life is now, which is crazy to think about. But, I mean, there were so many times where I just said and did the absolute wrong thing. But we never talked about family of origin. That was never anything that was brought up to us.
Wow.
We didn't learn about family of origin until we moved back to Baton Rouge. We were at St. Thomas More at the time, and Father Tom said, hey, we're doing Stewardship Sunday. We're revamping our Pre-Cana process. If you're interested in helping out with engaged couples, just write it in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were, this was 4 years after we got married, so I'm about 26 years old, maybe 27, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Like, why don't we try that out and write it in? I mean, we're gonna bring the median age down of sponsor couples, like, way down, but we wrote it in. And when we were training on how, that was the first time we heard about family of origin.
And tell people, you know.
So family of origin pretty much breaks down that everything that you do as an adult reverts back to how you grew up, the family that you came from, the different things that you did growing up. For instance, one of the most confusing times of my marriage was after we had been married for a couple of months. We were on a very limited budget because I had a degree in finance, but I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And I lucked into a really good job, but it was still a low-paying entry-level banking job.
Yeah.
And so we were on a tight budget, and Jill was in medical school. So
Fun times.
like we were making, negative $60,000 a year. Like that was just at this point, we're just taking on debt. So she's thinking in her mind, I have to save as much as possible, so every little penny counts. So when I go to the grocery store, I gotta come up with different things. Well, Jill came from a sit down at a table every dinner. Her dad expected a protein, a carb, a starch, a vegetable, and a bread. So, and that's what they had growing up. So in her mind, she thought all husbands expect for you to have all of these things. Y'all, if it wasn't white, brown, red, or yellow, we didn't eat it growing up. All right? Like, there was no green on our table. Like, she just kept putting vegetables in front of me.
And not to defame my parents,
Sure.
but, like, McDonald's was a healthy
Oh,
dinner.
yeah, that was a healthy.
growing
We
up.
lived behind the McDonald's. We walked there by ourselves because, like I said, we're elder. I'm an elder millennial. You're
Yeah.
my brother was Gen Xer.
It was stupid the
like,
way
they didn't care. Yeah.
I mean,
long as you
it
were
wasn't
back
the parents,
by
like
sundown.
everybody did that.
Yeah.
And you got to collect all the toys
You
at
did?
McDonald's. Yeah. And
They
a Diet
had great
Coke to
toys.
drink.
Yeah. So she, all of a sudden, she just starts crying. And I'm just oblivious to what is going on. I'm like, what did I do? And she's just like, we're on such a tight budget. And I'm trying to cook all these vegetables in different ways. I'm like, sweetheart, I don't eat vegetables. I do now.
Yeah.
Like, thank you. Like, another way that she's,
Sure.
implemented different things. But, we didn't know. And she didn't know to talk to me. Like, God forbid you talk. Because, like, our parents are wonderful Catholic. They're married. They've been married the same amount of time. They got married 2 weeks apart from each other.
Wow.
We grew up in the church. They made sure that we were there all the time. Vacations, we never missed mass. We did all of that. Just wonderful examples. I know your dad very well, Coach Peter.
Yeah.
Just kind of similar upbringing. And so, anyway, but like we didn't see like different, like how to handle, disagreements and things like that. And we weren't taught that. We weren't taught to go through things like how did that get handled.
A perfect run up. It's like you don't want to burst the perfect bubble.
Yeah.
And like everything's been like preordained for you.
Right. So we're doing all of this and we're thinking to ourselves like this should be easy, right? And there might be people who are listening to this going like, yeah, like we have a similar setup. Like if you don't talk about your expectations and how to handle conflicts, and I think at the time too we hadn't read the 5 love languages either.
Yeah.
And so
we haven't either. We got gifted to us.
Read it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. It changes everything, because what it boils down to is that everybody speaks a combination of 5 different love languages: physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, and acts of service.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to receive in one way, and you want to
Exactly.
give in another way.
Yeah.
Well, and then also too, how you most receive is also how you instinctively try to give back.
Right.
So for me, like my love languages are physical touch and words of affirmation, which, by the way, shocker, I have 7 kids and my love language is physical touch, but oh well, you figure it out. So yes,
Not physical
random guy,
aggression.
yeah,
That adds
random
up.
guy in the grocery store who stopped me to say like, do you know how this happens? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
my guy.
I'm
I
an
got
expert.
you. I promise. Like,
I could write you a book.
yeah. Don't you own a TV? Like, what?
Yeah.
You want to watch TV instead of that? Like, no, I don't want. Like,
Right.
So anyway, but my wife's is my wife's or I don't know
Yeah,
the proper way there.
We'll think
Anyway,
about that later.
There you go. Yeah, we'll circle back around. Quality time and acts of service. So we're on opposite ends, and it's hard when your love tank. They call it a love tank. When your love tank is full, I mean, you can do all 5 standing on your head without any problems. But when you are empty, when your kids have been just all over you, like my wife gets touched out.
Yeah.
She just does. Like my
Hey, you looking at me
kids,
over there?
my kids will walk past me, my dad, every man in the world to look for mommy to ask her to do something that any of this line of people could have done for them. Like their favorite word is mom. It is it. Like there are some mornings where I wake up and I walk into the kitchen and I'm like, y'all have used up your limit of the word mom today. If I get woken up to mom, I'm like, that's it. Don't say mom again.
Yeah.
I mean, the way you've described her, I mean, it sounds like she's the Blessed Mother. So
My wife, she's very close. I mean, it is.
If all of us could be like mom to the Blessed Mother,
Right.
that much
Right.
better. Right?
It really is. It really. No, she is such a giving and wonderful person. And so like we're learning about all of this stuff together, and we'd been married for a couple of years. Now, mention the fact, okay, we have 7 kids. We practice NFP. The first 2 years that we were married, Jill could not get pregnant because she was in a class called the Cadaver Lab, where there are a lot of chemicals there that if you get pregnant, you're not even allowed to be in that lab.
Like
learning
BTEX compound, like formaldehyde
Exactly.
kind of stuff.
So
Wow. I
you're-
didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to be around it. So it would have, had she gotten pregnant during that time, she would have had to delay her schooling
Sure.
and go back. And so we were strict in FP, and that's why I always like get a little frustrated when people talk
Yes,
about,
we know.
oh, it's the rhythm method and it doesn't work. No, it works really well.
90-something percent,
99.9%.
Natural family planning.
Yeah.
And
Is
it also
learning. Yeah. If you
Learning about the physical one, you participate in the miracle of life with God, and you prayerfully discern whether or not this is the time that we're supposed to be pregnant and get pregnant.
I mean,
And so,
it's also helpful if you're trying to get pregnant.
exactly,
right?
you know exactly like different times. Like we've gotten pregnant every time we've wanted to. So I mean that's
Yeah.
kind of where we were. And unfortunately, we've dealt with a lot of couples who don't have that gift, and it's very
when you start talking to
traumatizing.
folks, it's not as easy as it seems,
right?
To get pregnant.
And I think too, not to go off the railings here, but while she was in medical school and learning about different things, she had a rotation and a class where the way it's taught now, it's like every problem, they're just like, oh, birth control.
Absolutely.
If a girl is having problems early on, let's put her on birth control. Well, now you're messing with chemicals, you're messing with your natural cycle, and it starts interrupting different things. And there's never a root cause of figuring out why you're having these problems. And there's so much infertility now.
Ultimately, you're packing a woman full of what used to be classified by the World Health Organization as a carcinogen, right? What class 4 or whatever class it was. So, I mean, it's long-term sterilization.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And then we could talk about that for hours.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So getting back to it, first 2 years we were trying not to get pregnant, but we still hadn't learned about family of origin yet, because that was still after we moved back to Baton Rouge.
I'm not sure we have.
Yeah.
We did Witness to Love, which was great, and FP.
You talk about a little bit of family of origin in that. Ours was called Engaged Encounter, but
okay. Okay.
But
but we didn't go in
into
deep
detail.
depth. We need to approach that maybe in our DC circle. I don't know.
And plug for Witness to Love and other programs that are improving.
Sure.
Onboarding
all
people
this,
into the parish, right? Being part of that life of the parish. Right. That's so important. Right. Mentor couples, things like that.
Yep. So after her second year is completing, so in May of 2008, we get pregnant. And we had tried. So it was like, okay, this is awesome. This is great. We're telling everybody, like, this is incredible. We were so excited. We gave, Jill's little sister was getting married in June, and my parents had come up. And funny story, so you had Michael Franco on the podcast. I met Michael Franco because he was roommates with my brother-in-law, James, so Heidi's husband. I met him when he drove up to Shreveport to be in the wedding and stayed at my wife and I's house, because we had bought a little house, a little starter home, and he and Jason Romero were there, and my parents were coming up for the wedding, and they had arrived, and I was like, look, guys, I hate to do this to y'all. Can y'all go in the back? By back, I mean from me to you. Like, this is a tiny house. And I'm like, can y'all just close the door? Like, my parents are here, but they're gonna go somewhere else. To their hotel, but we're gonna tell them that we're pregnant. Oh. And so, like, I had just met Michael Franco. That's the first interaction I had with him.
Could you just get out?
Just go hide in the back room, please, real quick.
There's a closet.
And so we tell our parents, and we tell them by giving them a birthday card, like saying join us for, and we have the date on there. It's in February 2009. So they're excited, and we have all this joyfulness.
Is the first baby.
First baby.
Yeah.
And on July 11th, I turned 25, and my wife called me crying. She had miscarried the baby, and so here I am on my birthday, my 25th birthday, and I'm thinking,
quarter life.
Huh?
Quarter life.
Yeah. And I'm just like, just confused. Like, confused because I'm not sure, for me, like, what did that mean quite yet? Like, am I a father? Am I not a father? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like, I had this confusing baby. This baby existed. I know that I helped create this life, and now it's gone. And it happened, like, on my birthday.
And how far was she from the due date again?
A while. I mean, we had gotten pregnant in May. This was July. So, okay. 2 months, a couple of months. The baby was due in February. We do end up having a service performed, and we named the baby Benny. So, like, my oldest is Abram. My oldest is Benny, who's in heaven and interceding for us. Is that short for
Benedict, or just? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so, my brother ends up calling me about a month later to let me know they were pregnant with their first child. And unfortunately, and I hate admitting this, but like I wasn't happy for him. I was jealous and I was mad. And his wife ends up going into early labor and goes into the hospital the day Benny was due. And so it's just kind of, I'm like sitting here and just going like, all of these like different things are happening. But luckily we were blessed with another pregnancy right after that. And that's when Abram was born. He ended up being born later, July 2009. So he's 5 months younger than my oldest niece, my brother's daughter. And so they're very close in age, but it still like took your breath away a little bit when you have to deal with that first miscarriage. So I always say, like, I tell people I have 7 children. I have 11 children. We lost Benny. We had Abram and Andrew, and then lost Bernadette. Had Caroline and Samuel, lost Jerome. Had Matthew, lost Miriam. Had Daniel and Jacob.
These are some strong names.
Yeah,
These
thanks.
are some good names.
Thanks. So we have all of this stuff going in, but we noticed that like with each one, it was starting to be like all of these different reasons of how and why all of this stuff was happening was so miraculous in our lives that even though we had to deal with the pain of these miscarriages, there was still some joy that was being brought in there. Scott Harrington, I know you mentioned he's piloting your circle in domestic church, and so I'm in domestic church with Luke Zumo and Katie Zumo. We were in the second circle formed in Baton Rouge, so 10 years ago.
Was Scott part of the second circle? Or?
No, Scott is piloting your circle, correct?
Right, so they previously were in a circle, I don't know.
Yeah, a while back.
But yeah, we lucked up and
snagged them. Yeah, they're such great. But I heard, and when Scott said this, I was like, yes, this. First of all, like, he is such an amazing man of God.
I love Scott.
He said, if our goal, if our lot in life is to get our kids to heaven, God gave me the grace to give me 2 freebies.
Yeah.
Talking about his miscarriages. And I'm like, how beautiful is that to think of the fact that
mission accomplished.
That God said, hey, Casey, like, look, I know that you are fallen. Here's 4 freebies right here. Benny, Bernadette, Miriam, and Jerome. Like, here are 4 saints.
Hot air balloons
that can
anchor you up.
Yeah, and interceding for you.
Interceding
for
for us. And so I mentioned we had Abram and Andrew.
And so Abram, I mean, you know how the prophets would name their children for their like themes in their lives? You know, like Isaiah, Malel, Halal, Hash, Baz, like the longest name in the Bible. It's like speedy spoil, quick booty, because Israel was going to be taken and they were, in captivity. So, and you have many children, right? Father Abraham, Father Abram, so I mean, is that part of the?
No, not necessarily. I liked the name. Like, again,
it might be in retrospect.
In retrospect, you think back to these graces that I'm talking about. Like, God takes just the simplicity of me, the nothingness of not knowing that much about your faith, but knowing there's a feeling there, and being able to work through that and say, like, here are all the blessings for it. So Abram was a name that I liked, and growing up, I had a best friend who, he had 3 brothers. So there was 4 boys in their family. Their dad's name was CLA, like his initials, CLA. And all of the boys were CLA. So I'm thinking, okay, I don't necessarily want to do that, but I would like all of because my grandfather was a middle name Paul, my dad's middle name Paul, my older brother's Paul, and I always kind of like felt a little envious of that and wanted to do something. So Abram's name is Abram John Fruge. My name is Casey John Fruge.
Oh, okay.
Well, then after that, I was like, okay, I want every boy that we have to have a J middle name. Thinking, okay, there's plenty of saints, right? Well, I have 6 sons, so by the end, you're like, what's
have you gotten to
going
Jehoshaphat? Yeah, or Josaphat is the saying. And then Jehoshaphat. Have you gotten to those?
I haven't gotten to those yet, but I do. I have one for Jacob that I'll get to in a second. But I joke that, the Saints won the Super Bowl in 2000, but 2009 season, Abram was born in 2009. And so when we got pregnant with Andrew, I was like, well, his name's Andrew James Fruge because my wife wouldn't let me name him Drew Brees Fruge. So we call him Drew, but anyway. But they were like, why'd you pick Andrew James Fruge? And hand to God, because the monogramming is the same. Like we could reuse all of those shirts and different things that said AJF on it.
Oh, wow.
So like Andrew's named, and like I wanted to name him Drew, but I was like, if we name him Andrew, then we don't have to read.
The Saints picked us too. You'll find a reason why.
And then you have James and John. They're the sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder.
And she's one of the tougher words.
So it's John, James, Joseph, Julian, Jude, and Justice. So Jacob is Jacob Justice Fruge, but
That's
it's
awesome.
like
After
Pope Justice, Justus.
Justice?
Not David Justice. No, I'm an Astros fan, man. Don't hit me with that.
Say it again. J-U what?
Justus.
Oh,
He was
like
just us.
Yeah.
So we had Abram and Andrew, and then we got pregnant again and lost that baby, and thought, like, okay, this is happening to us again. Not really sure what's going on.
This is what's the order again? We're at third or
We're
fourth?
at the third.
Okay.
We're at the fourth pregnancy at this point.
Gotcha.
And it was easier this time because we had kids, right? And at least we could like fall into them and just be and love them well. And they were best friends. I mean, Abram was 3, Andrew was 1. And Abram loved Andrew. He was giving him hugs. He was loving us. He was just such this loving kid. Well, Abram was born 5 days after my birthday in July, and he on his 4th birthday stopped talking completely. And it was just kind of like, whoa, what's happening? Like he would not make eye contact with you anymore. He wasn't talking. He wasn't hugging. He would now avoid Andrew when Andrew tried to play with him. And Jill had gotten re-pregnant. So she had gotten pregnant with Caroline. And had we not lost that baby, that second miscarriage that we had, the baby would have been due a month after this started happening with Abram.
So it would have been a lot of things.
It would have been a lot going on at one time. We would have been having another baby, trying to acclimate to that, and then figuring out what is wrong with our oldest kid. Because he went completely numb to us. Like would not, like if you tried to hug him, he would just scoot away, push away, just hated everything about that. And we had so many different tests and EKGs and EEGs and anything. I mean, anything that could be attached to him during that time, they attached to him. And they gave us several diagnoses and then came back later and said, actually, it's not that. We don't really know what's going on with him. And we did finally get a diagnosis of gray matter heterotopia. So all of our brains are gray matter. And as we develop, the gray matter starts moving to the outside part of the brain and the inside part becomes white matter. Well, there was a section in the part of his brain that controls social interactions that never developed out. So it stayed gray. And if you look at him now, you just think he's just a normal kid and he interacts.
Because the rest of the brain kind of
right, because everything else goes well. And in fact, he came to your art class, and he's actually a pretty good artist. He learns well. He was in special ed.
Superpowers.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
He does learn well, but he's not in regular education. He was in the diocesan special ed program for a little while, and we actually now homeschool him. But during that time, we still didn't know what was going on, and he wouldn't get violent with Andrew, but it was a little scary of like, what would it be like around a newborn, like when we have her in. So we're terrified at this point, and just so raw and vulnerable from 5-6 months of dealing with this. Well, Caroline is born in the end of November 2013, and my parents bring Abram and Andrew to the hospital to meet her, and Andrew doesn't care. Like, he didn't care about the baby. He just jumps on mommy because he misses her. And Abram just kind of walks over, and I'm kind of standing there like, okay, how's this gonna go? What's gonna happen? And I'm going to try not to get super, anyway.
Take the water if you
He, he looks at Caroline and he just goes, baby, hey, baby.
And it's his first words.
First words in
What?
5 or 6 months. And I'm just like, oh, like
Take
you
my
just,
heart.
yeah, like it's just like, I don't know if you've ever had an experience where the world is like whatever clamp was on your heart just gets like removed immediately. And you're like, okay, this is going to be okay. And like, so, I mean, Caroline she's my only girl. She's my, I mean, it is so different. I know you have girls. It is so incredibly different to look at like the dynamics between a father and his sons and a father and his daughters, and how that
And they're so
that
helpful.
interacts. Right, they
Like
are.
if I could have had 5 girls to start with, we'd probably have like 25 kids.
There you go. Yeah. But Abram, you know, he still has these delays. He still has different things, but he's incredible. He's so, you know, the one thing that I say when it comes to this thing that he has to deal with is that all of our friends right now, we're all kind of in the same place, and we had our DC meeting last night, and one of the couples was talking about their son driving, and you know, Abram's 15 now, so he, you know, will be in driver's ed soon, and starting to think about driving and stuff like that. But they, you know, they'll talk about different things like the struggles of dealing. They'll say stuff like, oh, you know, just those teenage years, and I'm like, Abram doesn't have that. You know, he's 15, but he doesn't have that rebellious.
Oh, yeah.
He's very obedient, very loving. Like he takes on that older brother role really well. He has a dog pack. He's very just very sweet in how he deals with stuff and things like that. So it's such a blessing, and I think that you definitely, as a father, you want your kids to have the easiest life that they possibly can. And sometimes you lose track of the fact that even though you have something that's labeled as a disability, like sometimes it could be a blessing in disguise. So, you know, having Abram and going through all these different therapies and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, we're getting used to this. We're living our life. I mentioned, so after Caroline, we had Samuel, then we lost Jerome, we had Matthew, then we lost Miriam, then we had Daniel. And at this point, I think I'm 37 probably, and thinking, well, this is like, you know, I'm getting older, Jill's getting older. Daniel was a difficult pregnancy, so.
This is the 5th, we're at the 5th child to be born?
So Daniel was our 6th child born.
Gotcha, okay. So,
and he, like, Jill had almost lost him. He was she labored for a while. Oh, I'm sorry. I glazed over the fact that my wife had 7 natural childbirths. Like, she went fully natural, no epidurals. I know that I'm probably, like, building my wife up to be Captain Marvel at this point, but, like, she really is. She kind of is. Like, she's incredible, and every time I tell that story, I'm like, y'all have no idea. Like, first of all, pain threshold doesn't exist. Like, if I get a paper cut, I'm down for the count. And she's just like, no, I have these 7 humans that, you know, it's fine. No big deal. And she always, I would say, the beauty of seeing her go through that, and the beauty of childbirth, and the thing she always says is, praise you, Jesus, every time. The first words out of her mouth, praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus. Awesome. And just seeing that example of her is incredible. So
it's like watching, you know, your wife not it's like watching your wife be crucified, you know, in a way. Not as though treated as a criminal like Christ was, right? Treated as kind of a goddess, not to do that in an idolatrous way, but and when my wife was able to do the last 2 natural, and it's like when they're done with natural childbirth, I'm not saying they just spring up out of bed, but like
it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, all right, we're ready to go.
And you do learn about things. So we did take a class, and
Superhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost got us kicked out of the class several times because I can't take anything seriously. I'm just like making jokes the whole time, and this woman is up there. And
Are all the people in the class like first time
yes,
parents? Okay,
we're all first time parents, and we're all just doing different things. And anyway, so they're talking about transition. Transition is like a time where like literally nothing makes sense. Like your body is so ready to give birth at this point that you're not saying words. You're saying stuff, but it's not really. You're just out of it. And I'm watching this, and you mentioned Jim Gaffigan earlier. He talks about how like father coached birthing is like, that's a big term to give somebody who's really just scared in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, we're just praying the rosary at most.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm in there, and my job is supposed to be monitoring the contractions on that little, what I like to call the seismograph machine, because that thing at some points
Here we go.
they call them like peaks and valleys, and it's going up, and I'm like, oh look, a contraction's starting, like she couldn't feel it, right?
Uh-huh.
They're just
So-
giving us something to do because
Oh,
they
yeah, it's
know that
tickling.
we.
So I see one, and they're coming, and they're going up high, and I can
Here's
see
a
her
coloring book,
face.
Dad.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see her face, and I know that she's in pain, and I know she's going through some stuff. Well, then all of a sudden, one leaves the chart,
No.
and it's like it's up. It's past where the screen is allowing you to see where that mountaintop is, and it keeps scrolling, and then all of a sudden you see the line coming down. I'm like, okay, you're coming out of it. Like that was a big one. And so, like, again, like she couldn't tell me. Yeah, that was a big one. Thanks, honey. So I mentioned earlier how I say and do the wrong things all the time. She had one of these giant ones, and I think Haley's gonna like want to stab me when she hears the end of this story. But she had one of these giant ones, and it's coming back down. I'm like, hey, baby, you're doing great. You're coming out of this. I'm like, oh no, wait, it's going back up. It was a double peak. But it immediately turned back down and started coming back down. And I was like, oh, it's okay. It's a tiny one. She stopped. And she put her hand on my arm. And she kind of just like lovingly touched my arm. And she just goes, sweetheart,
Shut up.
contractions are a lot of things. But they are never tiny.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, you know what? Noted, I will never use the word tiny again when discussing a contraction
Here's
during
an
childbirth.
Etch-a-sketch. Go sit over
Stop
there.
it. I'm still hurting.
Like, do you have a Game Boy or something? Like, I don't know that I really made out for this. I joked like watching my first child be born. Like, of all the things, like I'm like, what is that? And they're like, that's your kid. And I'm like, no, it's gray. And they were like, yeah, they come out a little gray.
Yeah,
like,
they're
that's-
weird.
They
Yeah,
come
it's
out
got
a
a
little
little
weird.
gray
The head
percent.
gets all like
I
wrinkled up.
remember that first one, and like a little head comes
Yeah.
out. I'm like, wow, that baby is tiny. And then the head keeps getting bigger and
Not supposed to say
bigger.
tiny.
And it turns out she had a little cone head.
Yeah.
You know, because it was just like it started. The head was about 1,000 times bigger than that.
Right.
What I thought was about to.
So we gave birth to Abram in Shreveport, and that's where my wife was born, grew up, lived her whole life before college. And when her mom went into labor, she had been a part of this her grouping of doctors. Her doctor was a little bit older for Jill's older brother, but he was out of town, and so this new young doctor was on call and delivered Jill. So when Jill was a baby, but this doctor was still practicing by the time Jill was pregnant and giving birth in Shreveport. So he delivered Jill and then also delivered our firstborn.
Wow.
Now, one thing that I didn't mention is that Jill never finds out the sex of our baby.
Oh,
Really?
And
we don't have the patience for that.
so when you're married, and I think a lot of people might relate to this, you have that tendency of using the communal we, right?
Yeah, the royal we.
The royal we. So my wife would tell everybody when we were pregnant with Abram, oh, no, we don't want to find out. No, we don't want to find out. And finally, like after 7 months, I just said, sweetheart, we never discuss whether or not we want to find out, because we want to find out. Like, this person needs to know what to expect. Like, I'm not big on surprises at all. And she was like, look, to her credit, like, yeah, just don't tell me. I don't care. Find out. And so I did. So I have known the sex of all of our children, and she doesn't.
Wow, I've never seen
That's
that
an
combo.
option, Haley.
Yeah. Congratulations on the number 3 there.
Yeah,
So,
we don't know yet. We find out Easter Sunday.
There you go.
A Zumo Trinity.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I knew that we were having a boy, and the doctor knew we were having a boy. And Jill always wants the part of not knowing is her reward in her mind, not my words, her words.
Yeah.
The reward of my childbirth is seeing my baby and seeing, do I have a boy? Do I have a girl? So Dr. Alexander was going to grab said baby, hoist him up Simba style in the delivery room and show Jill. And this is Shreveport. So he's delivered Abram, and I see him, and he's just like beautifully ugly baby, right? Because like all newborn babies are kind of just like a little gross, but I just remember like crying a little bit, like I'm a dad, like this is my son. And I was 26 when I had him. My dad was 26 when he had me. We're equal distance apart. All of these things are flooding in, these emotions. And he goes to lift Abram up above so that Jill can see him, and the umbilical cord is wrapped around his leg, so he's trying to unwrap it. Well, the delivery nurse has no clue any of this is going on, and as she walks by,
oh no,
in the most Shreveport accent possible, just goes, "Oh, it's a boy." That doctor looks at this nurse like, I'm not going to do anything because they got all these people around, but when we get outside, you just stole my moment. Like 25 years of build up to this, and you just took it from, so his face was priceless.
It was the just us moment.
It was the just us moment.
It's
there
a
you
pun.
Go. It was just us.
That's called wordplay, honey.
Yeah. Dang. It's a boy. I mean, she was so sweet, but she was just, anyway, she had no clue she had done that, but just the funny, all the different childbirth and things like that.
But you said all subsequent babies have been delivered by Dr. Aycock?
All of them by Dr. Aycock, yes.
Can we just say how great Dr. Charles
he's amazing.
Aycock is?
He's so good. I saw him out one time. We were
classmates together. Yeah.
I saw him. We were listening to a band at a bar or something, and like I was talking to some friends, and I saw him sitting there, and he was having a drink, and he was like, "Hey," and I mean, if you know Dr. Aycock, he's very physical. Like, again, my love language is physical touch, but by my wife, I don't necessarily need to be touched by everybody
guys
else.
that like pop you on the face.
But Aycock is very like he'll like rub and the guy was just like, my buddy goes, who was that? I'm like, my wife's gynecologist. Like, I don't know.
He's just like, he's avuncular, he's like
he is.
A,
and he's
a dad
amazing.
or something,
We absolutely love. So Andrew's my second baby here on earth, and he's 13 now. And when Jill started to push, Aycock walks in, and my mom and Jill's mom were present for most of the deliveries, and they were in the room. And my mother-in-law is kind of a worrier, and she's very type A, very like has to have a plan for everything. And Aycock, he's getting gowned up, and he looks, and he just goes, "Oh no, you got a while." He walks across the room, sits down in the chair, just kind of like I am, crosses his legs, and closes his eyes. And my mother-in-law is freaking out, but my wife is loving it because she needs that calm in that instance. And
he's just
so he's doing this, and she ends up pushing for about 45 minutes to an hour for Andrew. And I joke that like Andrew was our only baby who came late. Like he'd still possibly be up there if like they would force him out. But
he always gives me a big like kiss on the forehead. After the baby's born. It's just like,
thanks, ACOG.
or like Ashton had an emergency C-section one time. That was not a fun time for anybody.
Right.
And he comes out in the hallway. He must sense that I'm kind of in a shock scenario. And he just comes out in the hallway and just sits with me, just talks with me in his scrubs. I'm like, maybe you should be with Ashton. But he was probably in both places, knowing him. You know.
So he's sitting there, and my wife had been pushing, and then all of a sudden he like opens his eyes.
Oh, no.
And he looks, and he just, as calmly as a human being can be, just like uncrosses his legs, stands up from the chair, walks over, doesn't like, no urgency, and just goes, okay, stop pushing the heads out. And it's just like, whoa. And so he delivers Andrew, and I'm like, that was the most awesome thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
You are the
nonchalantly just birthed my baby. Like, that is incredible. And so like, he is such an amazing guy, amazing doctor. And so we have 6 kids here on earth at the time. Daniel is, you know, he's 2, and we find out that we're going to have another baby. And for some reason, Jill said, you know what, like, maybe, in my mind, I thought, you know, she's 37 now. I'm 38. Like, maybe, this was 3 years ago, or a little more than that, because Jacob just turned 3. She goes, this might be our last pregnancy. Like, I don't know why, but I want to find out what we're having. And so to find out at that early stage, we had to get the test run.
Was that like,
to figure out
amniocentesis or whatever?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And we had never had it done before, because in our minds it was like, what does it matter? Like, it's not a big deal. Like, we'll figure it out. My wife is a physician, so she knows all of the different medical stuff that could go with that sort of thing. And I didn't realize there were so many different chromosomal things that could happen, where you know, that you have all these severities of it, and it determines like how long a baby can be viable for even. And I happened to be, at the time, I was working for a bank. I still consult with them now, but I was working for a bank where I had to travel to audit banks, other banks.
Like all over the state or all over the Gulf
Southeast.
Coast?
So Southeast.
Wow.
So like various states, Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. I mean, different things like that. I'm in Shreveport, so not terribly far away, but she calls me and she's upset. I can tell she's upset. And immediately I go to thinking like, please God, don't let this be another situation, because 2 of our friends had children who were 2 who drowned in pools. And I'm like, I can't imagine what would happen if I'm 4 hours away, X hours away from my family, and something like that were to happen. And luckily it wasn't that, but so the ACOG had called, and I'm sorry if he's listening to this, Dr. ACOG. I always just say ACOG.
Charles.
Right. So ACOG called my wife, or texted my wife, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. He called my wife, which doctors never do. And so she knew that. She's thinking, okay, there's something here. And he's like, hey, do you have time to talk? And she's like, just say it, Dr. Aycock. And he's like, well, you're having another boy. And the test came back positive for trisomy 21. Oh, yeah. So Jacob has Down syndrome. So my oldest son has something that presents as autism, and my youngest son has Down syndrome. And it is so funny. So like, I'm thinking, okay, everything's gonna be okay, sweetheart. He's gonna be fine. Like, we're
Welcome
good
to the
like,
light of your world.
Right. And so I'm trying to, and we're sitting down with other families, and there's like, well, really the main thing that you're gonna have to do is just get used to the therapies. And we're like, Abram's been in therapy since he was 4. Like, is that really the hardest thing? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, thank you. So like, it was a difficult pregnancy for her. Like, we did almost lose him a little bit. His heart rate had dropped.
Are they like bigger babies or something? Okay.
No, he was really tiny. He was born almost full term. He was about 8 months and a week or something like that. He did have to spend about a week in the NICU because he had some developmental lung issues.
Yeah.
He was on oxygen for about a year, but he is the happiest, like just this. I mean, everybody like looks at him and just sees the joy of this kid, right? Yeah. And we were talking about your Aunt Ava outside and her family, and she said something to us one time, like when you're older and your kids are older, you're never gonna look back and say, man, I wish I didn't have that one.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Like no woman, no father has ever said, I wish I had less kids.
Yeah.
When somebody says that to you, if you have enough kids, I'm like, okay, which of these kids did you not want me to have?
Right. Yeah. Which one do you want me to take away?
Which treasure are you going to take away from
this situation? Right. No, he is a blessing. And so Caroline, getting back to Caroline, when we sat the kids down and told them like, hey, you're having another brother. Yay. And Caroline loved that. Like she was too young to really understand Sam. She cried for Matthew because she wanted a sister. And when Daniel was born, she was like, oh yes, another boy. Like she loves being our only girl at this point. Like she eats
She's
that
the
up.
queen.
So when we told him about Jacob, she just looked at us and she's like, Mom, those babies have the best smiles. And we're like, you are awesome, sweetheart.
Give some pretty awesome hugs.
Like that is incredible. But he is. I mean, everybody loves Jay. Like I told y'all we went skiing last week. He was walking around the lodge, just going up there. He will go to any. We have to really focus on. Look, okay. Stranger danger is a thing.
That's a little
with him, like, because he will literally just go up to anybody and just like lift your arms up. And
you said he's 3 now.
He's 3 now. He just turned 3 a couple of weeks ago. He's doing incredible. Just this joy. But so now I have 2 kids with special needs. I mentioned Abram was in the special ed program his freshman year at St. Michael's. So he went to St. Michael's for a year. This was the last school year. So right now, what is this? The 24-25 school year. So 23-24 school year, he was at St. Michael's. And he was doing well, but he was never on track to actually graduate with a diploma. And like I mentioned, his birthday's in July. We started him like 5. I know a lot of kids now are a little bit older, at least a year older. And we realized like he has until he's 21 to earn a diploma. Like I think that we're doing him a disservice if we don't at least try homeschooling him and getting him to a point where he can graduate. Yeah. So we ended up doing Mother of Divine Grace, which your brother and sister-in-law do.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good program.
They're out of California. Wonderful online / at-home program. So you're like, there's a lot of videos that you can watch, and then a lot of things that you can do on your own. And with my wife being a physician and working, she has a good schedule where it allows her, she works 3.5 days. But it made more sense for me to stay at home more. And I was already working remotely. And the more that we got into the school year, this past year, so going into November, the more that you felt that calling of, I have to do something more for my family. But for me, like it's very, I'm just going to call it prideful. It was prideful. I didn't want to be the man being supported by his wife.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of held on to that. Like, no, I will always have an outside job because I can't just be at home thinking like that's what society says. That's what culture says. Like,
did you ever get to a point where you could embrace that? Be like, hey, this could be a sweet deal.
I'm still working on it, but I do now only consult for that bank that I work for. And I have transitioned to staying at home. So now I keep Abram and Jacob, the 2 bookends, my oldest and my youngest, home with me. And we're homeschooling Abram, and it's going incredible. I mean, he is
homies. Let's go.
Yep. My little homie with the extra chromie is at home with me, and it's incredible. So he's so good, and just getting that time with them, it's definitely a joy, and I can see that. But it is, I will say this, like it is something that I had to fight with a lot, like just being that masculine, whatever you want to think of, because there's nobody else in our really tight group of friends that can have that ability to do that. And so And then also I was worried about Jill, what kind of stress that would put on her. So I wasn't even mentioning it to her, thinking about all of these things.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until she said, have you ever considered just staying home? Like, it just makes sense. And she is, like I said, I've sung the praises of my wife this entire time, and she's an incredible woman. Like, there's no denying that she concedes head of household to me, even though like societal standards say, well, she out-earns you, she outranks you. Like, her name comes first on wedding invitations because she's a doctor and you're Mr.
How do you think Joseph felt about
exactly? Yes. I mean, you know, you're sitting there at St. Joseph and you're sitting at a dinner table with Mary and Jesus. If something goes wrong, it's your fault 100% of the time. Like, of course he never said anything in the Bible. Why would you say something if you have the possibility of being wrong? So, but no, I love that depiction of St. Joseph. I was telling Jacob outside, like, you know, every time in the Bible, every time in the Gospels, when an angel spoke to St. Joseph, he immediately did it. No questions asked. No, just complete obedience to the Father's will. And just that obedience also translated into what that fatherly figure was. And I love that painting. You had Roy on here who modeled it for you.
Yeah.
And
the
I didn't
Saudi
realize
princess.
I mean, I knew that I knew that I loved my sons, but I didn't realize how much like equity I had in my children. Like, like I'm listening to the story just going,
yeah, as a banker. Yeah.
Wait, hold up. A blank check? Like, we got 6 of them.
I mean,
hey, Sam.
You know, you might want to take a moment.
My
what
wife
kind of
hates that.
visitation?
She's listening to this right now. She's just like, oh my, you did not just say that. Please. That's a joke that only fathers can make.
we
Like,
do like
no
a-
woman would ever make
maybe
that
like a
joke.
lease arrangement. You know? I retain the asset.
Like, hey, buddy, wouldn't you want a pet tiger? I hear they have pet tigers. They're
Tigers are
awesome.
cool.
They're so good. I think they'll let us visit. It's fine.
So I got when I was in seminary.
Mhm.
I this is what they say. I didn't see at the time.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm just an idiot. They're like, you're too much in your head. We're gonna find a way.
Yeah.
We're gonna do something that's gonna draw you out of your head. Like, I mean, obviously, yes, I am nerdy, but so they sent me to a L'Arche community
Mhm.
as one of my hospital apostolate. L'Arche community. So the word is L''Arche. You know, like the Ark in
Right.
French, right? It's it's several homes kind of grouped together where persons with disabilities live, and you live with them and you take care of them. And it's like being an only child, it was kind of a frightening prospect in a way.
Sure.
Like, because I'd never changed a diaper, much less an adult diaper, right?
Yeah.
But you know, we had a person with Down syndrome. We had a person who with MR that, you know, just had kind of an injury-based MR. Somebody had it was exactly my age, your age, with autism. You know, very, very strong. You know, I'd have to cutting his fingernails was, you know,
Because there's a lot of sensory stuff there.
yeah. And we watched a lot of Golden Girls too, which was cool. But cutting, you know, I had to be strategic about cutting his nails. I like, at least I thought I was being wake up in the middle of the night, come at him with nail clippers. Hopefully he doesn't notice.
Sure.
Wow.
You know, like, but what better? God obviously knew I wasn't going to be a priest. I was going to be a seminary dropout. But that I was going to be a father one day, and what better preparation? You know, it was just, it was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Oh, it's my life is definitely one of those, like, it's not boring by any means. You know, having a big family, it wasn't something that we ever really discussed. You know, I'm one of 2 kids. My wife is one of 3, and so, you know, you get all of those different questions. You know, like, are you done? Like, it's such a loaded question. One, like, you're not.
It's not a fair question.
It's not a fair question. It's also too, like, not something, like, you know, why are you so emboldened to ask me if I'm done having kids? Like, look, if you want to set up a trust fund for each one, I'll give you their social security number right now. Yeah. Outside of that, I don't know why you can't. Like, I'm not asking you to babysit.
Can I just also say it's not a Catholic question?
It's not a Catholic question, no. But it is a difficult thing, and it's something that you have to overcome. We have to overcome culturally.
Yeah.
To say, like, this is okay, to not live in that sort of like having your 2.1, 2.3 kids, whatever that thing sort of is. But it really just boils down to the fact that, like, honestly, somebody else said this, I use it all the time, but it's like, how did you decide to have 7 kids? I'm like, well, I mean, once you have 6 already, like, what is one more? Like, you're gonna feel bad in the morning anyway, so you might as well just have. It's kind of like having a 7th drink at night. You're gonna feel bad already, so why not? Like, it's not like I'm getting any sleep, so it's not a big deal.
7th, 20th.
I do remember Abram was such a terrible sleeper. And we tell this story to any couple that we do engagement prep, but Abram was a colicky, difficult baby. He never slept, and getting back to me saying the wrong things all the time. I remember one time I woke up, and it had been several months after he was born, and I had slept through the night, and I woke up and I was like, oh man, I feel so rested. Like, I hadn't rolled over yet, and I was like, I feel so rested. This is amazing. He finally slept through the night. And when I roll over, Jill is glaring at me like, no, sir, you slept through the night. You were able to fall, like, literally just sleep through all of that wailing and screaming. And there was one time and she tells this story, so I'm not telling on her. She would happily tell this story as well, where she woke me up and she was crying, and she just goes, I think God made a mistake. I don't think we're supposed to be parents.
Whoa.
And my reaction is kind of just like, where's Abram? Like, she's like, he's fine. He's in his crib. He's fine. He's just not sleeping. And she tells that story lovingly now, because it's like, now look at us. Like, look where we came. Look, one is going to be the hardest. It is always going to be the hardest. And I like to just say, because a friend of mine and I were having this conversation the other day. He's like, look, you have a lot of kids. I really just, I'm not trying to be judgmental. I just want to know, like, what, do you say, because he's coming at it from a socioeconomic aspect of it. Like, is it proper to have this many kids? Is it like, and I'm like, well, economically, we're supporting this family.
Every time I want to raise, have another child.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
God takes care of it.
There you go. So, I mean, it's a matter of, like, we're being responsible to our family, and there's nothing else. So outside of that, it doesn't really matter everything else, right? It doesn't mean that the comments aren't hurtful, when you're somewhere and people will talk about, like, man, don't you have any self-control? I'm like, well, I'm currently not punching you, so yes, I have a lot of self-control.
Solid point.
But
it's like people might be called to build a family. I'm called to build an empire.
Yeah,
right. Like, there's so many lies we are told in society.
Right.
That you're supposed to only have so many kids. Women aren't going to be happy unless they can accomplish what men can accomplish outside the home and they have their career. I mean, the lies upon lies upon lies. No one ever tells you this could potentially be the coolest thing you've ever done. You could impact 100, 200, 300 years down the road because of this awesome family,
and then you got 6 and 7 people to wipe your butt when you're old.
That's right.
That's the goal.
I mean, I don't need a retirement plan.
Well, I do only have that one daughter, so I have to be as nice to her as possible, because I don't know that these boys are really going to.
It's like 7 chances to not end up in a home. There.
My wife. I will say this: my wife prays for their vocation every night when we do couple prayer. She always, which is such a beautiful thing to hear her pray for their vocations, and then also if they're being called to married life, praying for their future spouses, because you never know who can come into your family or who's going to come into your family, and there can be so many different situations, and you hear about awful things happening where families are divided over just dumb things here and there, but just having that ability to pray for and to say, this is something that we are going to get out in front of and ask God, like, hey, prepare their future spouses, prepare them for this sort of thing.
And future boyfriends, girlfriends.
How are they coming in?
I want them to be treated right by all their romantic
leading up to it. And how much of that falls on me, right? As a father, I have these 6 sons and this 1 daughter. My sons are looking to me to say, how do I treat a woman? Mm-hmm. How do you talk to mom? How do you talk to your wife? I know sometimes I'll say something like they'll start raising their voice, and I'll immediately be like, hey, don't talk to my wife that way. Because it's not just to them that she's mom. Well, to me, that's my wife.
I like that approach.
When you leave this house and you pick your vocation, she's still going to be my wife. She was my wife before she was your mom. She's my wife after she's your mom. Like, she's my wife now. And that relationship has to be cultivated the entire time. Yeah. And you can't, yes, you have to look after your kids and prepare them in a way that they're going to be able to benefit and live their most joyous life. But the person that you marry, like, that's the only vocation that you do to yourself. When you get married, you are the initiator of that vocation. The priest is there to witness it. And so you're the one making that vow. You're the one saying, this is the person I'm getting to heaven. And you're hoping that they can come right back and say, that's the person I'm getting to heaven. One thing that I've just over the years, I heard a priest say this one time, like, what do you expect out of your spouse? And a lot of people will just say, 50-50, right? And he's like, no, 0. Expect
100.
nothing from your spouse, because when you made that promise, you're saying that I am giving my love freely, fully, faithfully, and fruitfully. And the only way that you can do it fully is by giving 100%. Right.
You are a solidary obligor.
Yeah,
in Louisiana
exactly.
parlance. Yeah.
And so you don't expect it, but you hope that the other person is feeding into it. But that's the love of the Trinity. That's the example of the Trinity. The Father pours himself out, as Pope John Paul II said, God is love, God is gift. Love is gift. And for something to be a gift, it has to be 100% given away with no expectations in return. You can't hand somebody a gift, call it a gift, and say, now where's mine?
Yeah, give me that.
And that's why the like Father Ripperger and different exorcists will say the demons hate the Blessed Mother. Yeah. Because she gave it all.
She did.
She never took anything for herself. Like when we do a good deed, you're like, okay, I'm building my bank account in heaven. Like, Blessed Mother never thought like that, right? Yeah. And she gave more than anybody but her son. It's something to think about, that spirituality.
Right.
And have y'all, talking about the 2 boys, have y'all partook in any of the sensory masses that have been, do you know Etta Dupaqueer?
No, I don't think
so. She has a special needs son. I'd say he was like 13 or 14, probably around Abraham, but she's had to kind of bulldoze her way. I'm about to have her on in a couple weeks. She's been a pioneer of low sensory masses with like lower volume, lower light. I don't know if like you
we go to Mercy, man, it's high sensory masses.
Right. So I don't know, I didn't know if you've ever heard about it, but I would just think like how awesome that would be. We'll have to link y'all up.
Yeah, it'd be great. I will say, luckily, we don't deal with sensory issues as much as other families have to. Like, Abram doesn't have any. He doesn't like loud noises, but he'll cover his ears. Yeah. So it's not like if something happens, he'll lose it and not be able to control himself. And I would say, like, everybody else kind of understands that as well. But so it would be nice to just kind of just see. I'm always interested in how that sort of thing is implemented. But luckily, by the grace of God, that we have what I would consider mild cases of both things, because even Jacob's Down syndrome, like, we're talking, they're learning a whole lot now about people with Downs. Like, he had surgery, sleep apnea. A lot of Downs people have issues with their breathing and stuff like that. Well, when you have sleep apnea at an early age, you end up having a higher risk of heart problems, strokes, things like that. And so many of them have heart attacks.
Because persons with Down syndrome, they typically have shorter lifespans.
They do have shorter lifespans.
And that's why that can change that completely.
They're starting to learn different things. They're starting to think maybe that's why. So he had treatment on that, and he had oxygen for a year and surgery to kind of clear up various things. Like his face is very, he's got a Down's face. And when you see it, you just like, oh, he's cute little Downs baby, right? Just happy.
And you talk about like people looking at y'all with all the kids and stuff. With Jacob, I think about just ignorance of nature, of patronizing maybe Down syndrome or special needs kids. Like, could you tell us a little bit about your experience of that and like how we could do better, or like I don't know.
I would say this. There was really only one time, and it happened a long time ago, where somebody made a comment thinking that like I wouldn't hear or not know that they said it, where it was kind of like it made me angry. They called Abram the R word, and but it wasn't specifically directed at Abram. It was just the group that he was involved in. And outside of that, though, I do feel like we are doing a better job of, as a culture, embracing that sort of thing. Now, I laugh because, when people see, I will say this, when people see Abram, they expect a lot because he looks on the outside like everything else, like everybody else. But when he starts talking, you realize something's off. That there are more issues with that. Like, and I'm more aware of things like that. People will get annoyed at the bag boy at Albertsons because he's following them around asking questions. I recognize he's on the spectrum. And so I'll stop and talk, and then after a while I'll give him a cue, knowing like how I interact. Hey buddy, it was really great talking to you. I'm going to talk to you next time I come in. And so, but a lot of people will either just leave them because then they're like, you're bugging me, you're bothering me, you're in your own world. And it's nothing against them. You just, people inherently, they're trying to get in and out of different things. As opposed to Jacob, who people look at and not expect a lot out of because he has Downs, but then he actually can do a lot on his own. He actually is independent. So you have two different ways of kind of looking at things. And I think Downs is one of those things that there's a group here in Baton Rouge. It's called DSAG, Down Syndrome Awareness Group. And it's a really amazing thing. They have the Buddy Walk coming up on.
I saw the billboards.
Yeah, March 22nd, and so we have this team, right? You get together. It's like this big party. We go out. It's over by the state capitol. It's where the marathon festival also is. So same grounds.
I'm much more likely to go to DSAG than the marathon.
Yeah, than a marathon. Yeah. But so we have this team, and we call it Jacob's Justice League. But
for David Justice.
For his name, for David Justice. There you go. So, and it's this awareness group that kind of, because unfortunately, and it's not going to happen in our situation, luckily, or at least I hope it doesn't. I hope we're raising our kids to love being a part of this family, to where if something were to happen to Jill or myself at the same time, their siblings, like, especially Caroline says all the time, like, no, Jacob's just going to live with me. Right. But some people don't have that option. Some people... they'll have a baby late in life, and then that baby has Downs. Well, then as an adult, that Downs person doesn't have anybody left in their life. And so you either have to go to this home and be cared for by somebody who's not there, and then that's when you have the wonderful, you called it L'Arche, yes.
Which there's only so many spots.
There's only so many spots, exactly. And so I would say the great thing about DSAG is that they're trying to bring awareness to that issue. Like, there are so many marginalized people out here that, you care for them and you love them, but you kind of like appreciate their beauty, but you don't ever like step up and say like maybe they need a little bit more. So
a plug for special needs trusts, right?
Exactly.
Because you can put your assets there.
Right.
She can still get all the kind of government assistance, but also have this to supplement them, a trustee to look after them.
And he doesn't qualify for life insurance based off of his conditions and things like that. I would say I try not to think about it too much, but there are European countries who have bragged about, we have eradicated Down syndrome. No, you've just aborted every baby in utero that comes back with that test. The guy who came up with that chromosomal test, I don't know if this is true or not. I hope I'm not spreading
it's not Dr. Joseph Mengele.
Yes, he's Catholic and regretted coming up with that test because it's being used to increase abortions in that case. And to have, my wife she'll do something where I call it like, I'm like, I'm already on your team. Why are you trying to recruit me? Like, she'll show me a video of an adult Downs man giving a speech in front of Congress and being like, my life is not worth less than yours.
So I feel like God always gives us the antidote we need. And I feel like persons with Down syndrome and other disabilities too, they are the antidote to so much of what ails 100%. Our society. And of course you have societies that want to get rid of the antidote.
Exactly.
They want the poison, not the cure.
And somebody had described this to me one time. Like, sometimes you talk about the fact, like, are they a mistake? Well, is a flower on a cactus in the middle of a desert a mistake? Probably. But how beautiful is it? How beautiful is that mistake? Like, it's not a mistake because God doesn't make them, but it is just adding a sense of beauty. If our goal is to be joyous in life, like, what better example than somebody with that? To model it for you.
We're so emotionally stunted, but they're just like so good at bringing that out of us.
They are. And look, there's something to be said. Our reading last night in our domestic church meeting was Romans chapter 8, 14 through 17, and talk about how, being heirs to God the Father. God is your Father, and so therefore you are an heir, but you're only an heir if you participate with Christ's suffering. And so my prayer
have no
this
inheritance with me.
My prayer for the last few years even, but like really trying to focus in on Lent is, Lord, help me to suffer better. Because I don't think that we suffer well as a society. I don't think that we look at suffering as something that has to be avoided at all costs, and it can't be. We're pushing this boulder up that will never get up the mountain. And so learning how to just be gracious in that suffering and embrace that so that those graces can flow through us. And
that's one of the problems with capitalism. Like, it's a great system, but the profit is in taking away pain. Right. The profit is not in helping necessarily people find joy in suffering.
Well, we're not getting happier as a society. That's being proven. I mean, we're not, our culture is not growing and saying, hey, look, we're so much better now than we used to be. I mean, I laughed, like we were driving back, and we're losing so much from different things, like from technology. Technology is amazing, and it allows us to do things. It allows us to save time driving 17 hours to New Mexico because you have a straight shot instead of taking longer interstate routes. But
not dying in the West Texas desert.
Exactly, dying in the West. I remember, so I'm learning to drive. I'm 15 years old. It's 1998. And as I'm driving, my dad, I was going to get gas. My dad was like, no, don't stop there. There's a tanker in the gas station. Never get gas from a place that has from a tanker in it.
Hey, well, that's good to know. If nothing, people get that advice from this podcast.
I am 42 years old. I met my wife, and look, to this day, I still don't get gas there. I have never looked it up. I've never asked why. Because like back then, like if dad said something, that was truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you understood that to be true. There was no internet. There was no iPhones where you can just like Google search them real quick. And I don't want to know. I don't want to know if it's true or not. My wife was like, why? And I'm like, because my dad said so. Like that's just what you did. And so like having that reliance, like we talked about this a little bit earlier, like the importance of just being dad, just being present. Like our kids look to us for this sense of truth. Like I am the harder one. I am the more edgier one. My wife is the soft landing spot. We have embraced those roles, and she loves those roles because like, yes, if my kids look to my wife, they see her in this soft, loving, compassionate place to land, but they look to me to like verify, hey, is this true? Because instinctively, if our dad said something, like you can probably think of something right now that your dad said that you were like, I've never questioned that. Because as human beings, instinctively, we just say, yeah, our dad speaks truth. Mm-hmm. They did a study years back on, the effects of, the nuclear family. So if a child goes off and has a conversion of faith, tries to come back. So like, let's say I went to Steubenville, but my parents didn't go to church. And I came back and I was on fire and I said, hey, mom and dad, like, let's start going to church. The odds of it taking fire and making the whole family more spiritual, more faithful is it's in the teens. It's like 12,
stifle that fire,
right.
Suffocate the flame. Yeah.
So, and then I always thought when I was reading this, I was like, I can't believe this is true. If a mom has a similar experience, she goes off and I thought that number was going to be super high. It's only in the 20s.
Mm-hmm. But
if dad goes, it's in the 90s. Yeah. There is
Same
something
with
to be said.
Conversion rate of
Yes.
if your wife is not Catholic and versus if the dad is not Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like the same number.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about. But even so, like somebody had described this to me one time. If a father says go to mass with your mom, what is the father saying?
It's not important.
It's not real, but cater to what she feels, cater to her feelings.
Cater to the feminine.
Right, cater to the feminine thing.
It's not a masculine thing.
Right, as opposed to if dad goes there, they look at that and they say, okay, like this is true. And I will say this about my dad. I didn't realize this growing up because my mom is the extroverted, my dad is introverted. My dad is just your stereo. I knew my dad loved me, but like I don't know that I necessarily like I remember the times we've said I love you to each other.
Wow.
But he's an extremely hardworking man, and I knew through his example that he loved me. But the actual outward showing, he brought my mom back to church. I didn't realize that growing up. Growing up, my mom never went to mass. Like their family didn't go. And so when they met, even though my dad didn't have this over the top, like huge faith that like hit you over the head, just his example of we are always going to church was enough.
What's the priority?
Yes, that was enough. So like literally just getting there and being that example. And I'm grateful for that. Look, the three things that they say outside of faith, outside of anything else, the three things that successful people all have in common. Did you graduate high school? Did you wait to have kids until you were married? And did you come from a mother and father household?
Yeah.
The only one of those things that you don't control is your parents staying together.
Right.
So how blessed am I that I got to have that experience and have that mother and father. Like you want to talk about privilege? That's my privilege.
Yeah.
That's where I get that from. Like the fact that my parents said through thick and thin, and they didn't ever put anything on us. Like there was no, like if they were struggling, they never let us show it. Like we had a good childhood, we had a good upbringing, and so that's a blessing in today's world.
Yeah.
Where you
just
don't
start
have
thinking,
that much.
And when you start going down that thought path, like what percentage of the population are my children,
right?
That both their parents come from intact marriages.
Right.
Grandparents going all. I mean, not to say that there weren't some issues with the marriages going back, but like, as far as they can tell, now, you know, aunts and uncles are a different matter, but no divorce going back. I don't know how many generations.
Yeah. Well, I did.
You know, like what percentage is that?
Yeah. My mom's one of 7 kids, and unfortunately, we did have a lot of that, like outside, like extended, and I could see the effects that it had on my cousins and things like that. So, but you know, every family deals with that, and you try to be as loving and supportive as possible in those situations. But you know, it's just one of those things that I thank God for. I don't know what I did, honestly, to deserve the life that I have. It's not always easy. I do struggle with things. I struggle with anxiety and depression sometimes, and just living in this world of, you know, just expectations that I put on myself and then also feel from outside sources.
Well, speaking of that, and speaking of suffering well, Mr. Marathon, and speaking of anxiety, depression, like let's go into your marathon life. And is there like a prayer? I know when I go paint, I have like somewhat of a semi-formation or prayer into them. And is there, talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I don't know if you're watching this, listening to this. I'm 5'10". I weighed probably about 170 pounds, but I had gotten up to 250 at one point in my life.
Come on, dude.
And I mean, there aren't many pictures left of it because I've scrubbed the world of it.
Is this when your wife was like, "This is the one"?
This is the one. Like, she's so lovey and chubby. No, I was about this size when we met. And she loved me through all of those changes and balloons. But no, I laugh. You know, Nate Bargatze talks about the fact that like we grew up in a generation before like social media happened my senior year of college. So all the dumb things I did in high school, those were just rumors now. Like you can't go back and ruin my life with them.
We lucked up.
But anyway, so like I've scrubbed of all those pictures, but it really just happened. Like COVID actually forced me. So like in January of 2020, I was 250 pounds, depressed, hating everything about just different things, just eating through my feelings and not really being able to cope with that sort of stuff. And then when that happened, you know, you kind of were just forced to stay at home and be there. And I always say, like, the Lord blessed us during that time. Like in Louisiana, it's never not 90% humidity and 95 degrees. That was the most incredible weather that we had during that stretch where we were, you know, like at home for several months. I mean, I'm sure that weather,
like, the globe was healing.
Yeah, it was incredible. And so we were just going for walks and doing all kinds of different things. And I will say that I'm a pretty extreme kind of guy. Like if I really like get passionate about something, I go into it. And we had taken a trip to Nashville, and I knew that I couldn't work out, but I had lost a bunch I had gotten down to like 165 pounds and was best shape of my life. Like incredible, just felt good. I was working out a lot, I was walking a lot, but I still wasn't running. And I hated running. Like growing up, I played every sport that you could play. I didn't excel. I didn't play college basketball, but I did at least, you know, play it.
Look at us now.
You're a good looking man, Jacob. There you go. Anyway, we went to Nashville, and I didn't want to wake my family up. So I was like, let me just go for a run. I never go for a run. Let me go for a run. And I'm running through, and like I look down at my watch, and I realize like I've been running for 5 miles. Like this is weird. Like, am I just so distracted
never
right
had
now?
That experience in my life.
Right. Well, I had neither. I had never gone more than a mile, and then finally just been like, this is boring. I'm not doing this anymore. And so then I was just like, can I do this? I'm like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. So then I was like, I'm going to do the New York City Marathon. And like, I put it in my mind, I'm going to do that marathon. And then I didn't chicken out, but I was like, I have to at least attempt one before that. So I did the Louisiana Marathon first. And
when's the New York City Marathon?
It's in November. So early November.
That can't be optimum weather in New York City.
It was
Eunice
not
guy.
terrible. It was not terrible.
Different cold.
It was a different cold.
Yeah.
It was a drier cold. But and even then, like you learn as a runner. I would consider myself a runner now. So I did the Louisiana Marathon. I did the New York Marathon. I've done the Chicago Marathon, and then I redid the Louisiana this past January.
I thought Boston was like the...
So Boston, you have to 100% qualify or do a charity spot where it's really expensive. So it's not necessarily in the cards right now.
Okay.
And my qualifying time, I'm about 20 minutes shy of qualifying. So I would have to drop 20 minutes off my best time just to do that.
That seems unnecessary.
I am gonna try to hit all.
You can do it.
I am trying to hit all 7 majors. The next one that we're gonna do as a family. I'm gonna do the marathon, where we're gonna go as a family instead of just like me and Jill or me and Michael Franco. Actually, who was on your podcast, came with me to New York. He was my travel buddy. That was shortly after his plane crash too, like within a year.
He flew to New York.
And he flew again. He flew separately. I wasn't getting on a plane with him. But dude, sorry, too soon.
Me.
No, Michael. I love Michael. He's one of my best friends.
But I mean, if you need to survive a plane crash,
I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
God obviously wants that dude alive. Like El Macho Gato, Franco, man of many lives there. So he's incredible. But he came up to New York with me, and there's a video of him. He's like yelling at me, and I'm coming. He's taping me, and I'm coming the corner. And at this point, I'm not hating my life and every choice that I've ever made, right? Running these things. You asked me about praying. Like, I think every marathoner listening to this, mile 20, like I just pull out my rosary. Like I'm always, as Scott Harrington says, you got to stay strapped. Like you got to always have a rosary on you. So I pull out my rosary.
Is that one of the rugged rosaries?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So I pull out, and I don't run with this because it's too heavy, but I do have a slew of rosaries.
Yeah, get like a single thread rosary.
Right.
Get the old rugged rosary.
Yeah.
You know, the World War I vintage.
There's a video. I think it's mile 6 or 7 in New York. He's in Brooklyn, and I'm rounding the corner, and I hear, and you can see me see him, and I'm like, woo! And I run and like almost tackle him, like grab him, hug him, because I'm so jacked, and like the atmosphere in New York. I mean, you have 2 million people who just show up for the race. There's 8 million people who live there, and 2 million people line the streets, and you run from Staten Island through all 5 boroughs and end in Central Park.
Wow.
So it's
like a great way to tour the city.
It's a great way to tour the city. You see all 5 boroughs.
Does it go through Times Square? And
no, it does not go through Times Square. It goes north. There's a half marathon that I'm doing Sunday actually.
Whoa.
That runs through Times Square.
Nice.
So it'll be
this Sunday.
Mm-hmm, this
Wow.
Sunday. So it'll be really cool to do that one. I've done several races in New York at this point. There's a Roadrunners series that you can, New York Roadrunners, that you can do a bunch of different races, and it's a cool way of just seeing the city. And most of my kids have been to New York at this point and seen it and gotten a chance to. It's so different, you know, when you're up there. Like for me, I mentioned Eunice growing up there. Like I took my older 3 sons up to New York one trip, and I pointed at a building, and I was like, more people live in that building than my hometown.
Right.
By a factor of 2.
Yeah. Like that. There's so many just people there that it's just, for me, like it's just cool to enter. Like this is a life you're not used to. Like if you want to go play catch with your kid, you don't have to hop on a subway to do it. You can find a park.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like
Or go to a rooftop.
Yeah.
Oh, there goes the football.
There goes the
game.
ball. It's out. So we'll get that one back. But no, I mean, marathon running is one of those things that just, there's no explanation other than I fell in love with it. I caught the bug. I started doing it, and I enjoy doing it, and it's peaceful. And I do, like, a lot of people are like, how do you find the time? Like, honestly, I get up at 5 a.m. sometimes and just go for a run, and
See, that's a lot too.
I'm in bed by 8. I have no social, but I mean, I have 7 kids, so it's not like I have a social life anyway.
Yeah.
So. But no, it's cool, and I do love the St. Augustine quote where it's
The beard signifies the courageous in man. That one.
no, not that. Yeah, obviously, you can't tell. I haven't shaved in like a week, so I don't exactly grow facial hair very well. No, it's and I'm gonna butcher it a little bit because I'm trying to think of it, but treat your body like you're gonna live forever. Treat your soul like you're gonna die tomorrow.
Wow, that is a cool.
And I'm like,
quote.
that
I haven't
is
heard that before.
That is a great. And I think it's St. Augustine who said that. It might be somebody else. So I
It makes
apologize
sense.
to whoever.
It's
who
good
It's,
enough
it's
to be.
relative to
Yeah.
the one where he talks about
We were made for you, O Lord, and our hearts are restless.
no work as if you were. It's something like
Oh.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Never mind.
Yeah, pray as though everything depends on God. Work
Yes.
as though everything
Right.
depends on you.
So it's like
Yeah.
the same kind of.
That's like a
parallel.
Pio quote or something.
I think that's Augustine.
Oh, probably so.
I
Probably. so.
think it is.
Everything else is just adapted from
Yeah.
Augustine.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm looking at all the questions that I didn't even ask.
Sorry, I just started rambling there, so
No,
probably
no,
didn't
it's-
even get to.
That's
No.
good. That's
Get you
you know,
in.
in these conversations, we get to the point where we're
Mhm.
just like,
Yeah, we're
there's
just
no
talking in the
microphones here
gallery.
anymore.
Yeah,
We're
no,
just
this is
talking,
awesome.
you know?
It feels comfortable. It feels good just having a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Like now, we've really gotten
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
know you. You know.
Yeah. And it's
So is everyone else.
it's one of those amazing things that, like, leading up to it, I really didn't. I was like, you know, I'd reached out to you just to kind of say, hey, I'm really enjoying your podcast. So, like, I have several prints of your art. I enjoy your work. I always get outbidded at live auctions. There's always somebody single or older or richer than us, and I'm like,
Just take away
I'm
their
out.
paddle.
Yeah.
You helped.
I
elevate
helped
it.
get that price up, but outside of that, so I have a bunch of prints. I don't have any original stuff. Maybe I'll walk out of here with something. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, you give everybody one of those.
yeah. No, I mean, I didn't pay for it. I mean, but anyway, so I reached out, and you were just like, no, I want you on. I'm like, you sure? I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but, like, it's just, I mean, being a dad, being a husband, that's just who I am. And for a while, I did struggle. Like, who am I? Like, if, you know, I kind of briefly mentioned, you know, I graduated with a finance degree, but that's only because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I wasn't somebody who from an early age said, I want to do this or that. I think, again, I mentioned this, I'm just this happy accident of a human being that God said, hey, like, I have something for you. And one day I'm going to make it clear to you why you deserve it. But I'm eternally grateful for that.
Absolutely, man.
We do. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Let me ask a couple of these.
Okay.
Father Matthew Graham.
Yes.
Who's he godfather to?
He is godfather to Matthew.
Okay.
So a lot of people
That makes
ask
sense.
why, like, did we name him after Matthew? I actually named him after the Gospel of Matthew.
Like not the evangelist, but the gospel.
The
itself.
Gospel, yes.
That
So
is awesome.
only because, like, I love our Lord. I love our God. I love how he presents himself in ways that everybody, like, you can't say, like, you can't find a way that he speaks to you, because you have the Gospel of Matthew that reads like a Ridley Scott movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Everything is just action and so
Yeah.
many different things. And then you have the Gospel of John, where everything is poem and poetic and verbal and talking. And, like, my wife loves John. She likes that.
It's more of a Terrence
quality
Malick
time. Right,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so the first verse, and really, like, I know roughly, as a good Catholic, I know roughly where things are, but I can't quote the Bible.
Yeah.
But the one thing is Matthew 28:20, I'm with you always, even until the end of the ages. And I'm like, that is always been, it's the last line that he says before he goes back up into heaven. And there's something about last lines, like the last thing Mary ever says is do whatever he tells you to do.
And
Like, how
and
beautiful is that?
people talk about, there's also a verse that Mary remained a virgin until the birth of Christ.
Right.
And then Protestants will say,
Why
well,
until?
yeah, well, you just said the other time,
Right. Until the end of the ages. Does that mean he's not with us
It's gone.
anymore?
Poof.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Oh, it's the
It's
end
been
of the
real.
ages, so I guess I'm not with you anymore.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Eternity, I've got other plans.
We get hung up on words
Yeah.
that have been translated so many times from
Words
the original
that
source.
used to have such more expansive meaning.
Yeah.
And we have
A
made
limited
these words
amount of-
into the equivalent of American cheese.
Yeah.
Right? It's not even cheese anymore. Like the word pray.
Yeah.
Right? Pray tell. Like Shakespeare had pray ask, and Second Kings. Like pray isn't just adoration of God alone.
Yeah.
Right? So there's so many things we could go into on this.
Absolutely. So yes, he's Matthew. So he's our fifth. I had it was one of those things where we were like, "Hey, can priests be godfathers?" And he's like, "Priests can absolutely be godfathers."
Best godfather.
He's baptized Sam on down. So he's baptized our last 4 kids.
So y'all are at Immaculate Conception, Denham Springs?
No, we just had him baptized. Common
we
baptized
imported
him.
him.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, at a certain point, like if you send that many kids through Our Lady of Mercy, they start making they're like, yeah, sure, you
got
can,
the punch card.
Yeah. Yeah. 5th kid's free. There you go. Right. They have to all be there at the same time, which we have 1 more year of that. So, but
Really?
yeah.
Oh god.
That's
you still got to pay for the other 4, but the 5th kid's free.
But that's killer that it has to all be at the same time.
That
if it was
is.
from elementary and high school, it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome. I kind of wanted to make a connection to the gospel since we're talking about Matthew.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of the questions I had was, how does practices like daily family prayer or monthly dialogue help you avoid babbling?
So
And instead foster authentic communication? Like, how has that been for y'all?
yeah, it's one of those things that don't be afraid to. First of all, family prayer and couple of dialogue. Those are tenets that 2 of the 7 commitments of domestic church, which I know we've talked about a lot on the podcast and through other episodes. Don't be afraid if you're trying it and it's not working at first, because look, kids are kids, and sometimes my wife and I joke about this. Sometimes you pray angry, all right? Sometimes you're like, Lord, please be with Matthew to stop moving around on this couch so much before I lose it on him. And so
Me and Haley,
you're trying but you don't want to completely just stifle that wiggle out of them, because the Lord put that wiggle in them. That's who they are and what they are. And you think that you're not making an effort, and then your kids will say something or do something, and you're just like, okay, you're paying attention.
Yeah.
You're seeing it. Just the example alone of and hearing, like, at the end of the day, like one time, there's nothing more humbling than yelling at your kid earlier in the day, and then him to be like, Lord, help me just to be a better son. And I'm like, okay, Dad's sorry. You're a great son.
Yeah.
Dad will never do that again.
Yeah, you're a great son, dude. Don't think that you're not loved. Don't think that you're not, like, that's the worst place to be, is feeling unloved and alone. You're loved. I love you. God loves you. Mom loves you. Like, you're special. Like, don't. So you hear that and you do that, and then dialoguing with my wife monthly. It's one of those things. We always joke that, like, when we're in it, it's so hard to see, like, the disagreement, like, so hard to see the outside. But then when you dialogue back on it and you have that time, you invite the Holy Spirit into the conversation. It's hard not to have that. I'm going to. I'm gonna, like, really pray and be present to you in a loving, ready to listen and come up with a good solution manner for it. So it's just incredible. It's hard to describe. It's hard to really put into words of it. So she's texting me right now, in fact. So, hey, babe.
Like, where are you?
Yeah, I got a text that the dog was off the leash.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
well,
So-
dog's gone now.
Yeah.
No, I guess do you have the question from yesterday?
Yeah, I do. It's
So,
right
like,
here.
we're asking the guest
like,
to
I'm
ask
sure.
the next guest a question, and we forgot, of course, Kathleen. Poor Kathleen. I haven't gotten to producing the episode before her, so we didn't know hers. But we have
Kathleen? I'll
Kathleen's.
text Kathleen.
Yeah, I got
But
hers.
we have Kathleen's for you. We didn't have one for her.
Oh, okay.
And then you'd be thinking about,
Sure.
while you're
Okay.
thinking about answering this question,
Okay.
you'd be thinking about what question you're going to ask the next person.
Right.
So it's almost like we could have told you about this before.
There you go. No, it's fine.
Okay, let's see if I can read my writing. What would you be patron saint of, and what would your holy card look like?
Patron saint of.
Cool question.
Oof.
Huh?
Can you be the patron saint of worrying? Is that like a thing?
Are you Italian?
Huh?
I said, are you Italian?
No, I don't know. No, I'm definitely not Italian. I'm Cajun.
Is there a patron saint of marathon runners? I mean, runners.
Yes, Saint Sebastian, I believe.
But he's just like
runners.
runners.
I don't know if it's specifically runners. Definitely athletes.
Yeah.
Pheidippides would probably be
the patron saint of chafing. I don't know. That's a hard question. Come on, Kathleen. What are you doing to me?
Jim Gaffigan, I think, talks about that too.
Oh man, that's all. I'm gonna text her after this. Be like, what did you do? Why would you ask me
Patron
that?
saint of Eunice. They may already have some of those.
Yeah, probably so. I'm just gonna say the patron saint of raccoons because I'm just dealing
Wrangler?
with these little feral animals running around my house, and
The raccoon tamer.
it could just be like me with the black eyes, right?
the banded
There you
head.
go.
Well,
Gotta hold it there.
There's multiple symbolisms behind that, like the tired dad raccoon eyes.
Yeah.
That also
There you
that tells you right there what's going to be on your holy card.
Yeah. There you go. That's the holy card.
Awesome.
And the raccoon's got to be like
let's see.
standing
And
up. on the
who's
holy
your
card.
confirmation saint too?
Oh, yeah.
Saint John the Apostle. So one, just being the younger, of two boys, and then to
Your middle-
have my middle name, but then also I always liked that he just rested on Jesus and like that comfort of it. So, and he was a little fiery. I mean, it takes a lot of gumption to ask God to rain down fire on other people. And like, I don't know that there's definitely been a time where I've been like, God, can you just kind of like send something their way, please? Like,
And
did you really just ask me that? Did you really just ask me to rain fire on somebody?
And close to Our Lady.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about Joseph,
Adopted
Absolutely.
mother.
your role,
Mhm.
and Saint John Evangelist.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude, close to Our Lady.
absolutely.
And his later life, he was the only one not martyred, but
He was. Yeah.
they tried many times. Like Patmos, where he had the visions of Revelation. This is a Greek island.
Yeah.
It's just rocks.
Yeah.
Right? There's no food growing on this island. All the food that, when you're exiled there, you have to rely on a boat of Romans coming and throwing stuff onto this island, or you're going to die from starvation. So that whole time, he was on the brink of starvation. And I write about that as a possible near-death experience, but that's probably the biggest stretch of the biblical ones. And then they tried to throw him in a vat of boiling oil,
Yeah.
and he just popped right out. It's
And the
like,
Lord wanted-
scrubbing his back.
Mhm. And I guess that gets back to like sometimes I just don't know why the Lord is placing me in these things. So maybe
this
it relates
burning
back to
oil.
that. God is saving me from a lot of things, and maybe it's for something, and I haven't figured it out yet. But or maybe I have and stumbled upon it and have already done it, or I don't know, and just don't see
Or
the fruits of it. But,
Only see it clearly in
Yeah.
retrospect.
Like the
Yeah.
precursor to Mardi Gras.
yeah. So I guess my question for the next one.
Oh yeah. Wait,
how
let
do
me
you
get my pen out?
Oh, there you go. How can you see yourself suffering better? Because
Wow.
I want to know. I want to know other people's stories. Like I want to
Just
learn
listen
from
to
other
Joel
people.
Osteen, and
There you
just,
go. Yeah. So yeah, she's texting me. As much as I've enjoyed this, I think I do probably need to wrap it up just because Jacob is at home and I need to get back to him. And
I hear you.
I am a father,
too.
husband first, but I
Yeah.
definitely thank you so much for allowing me to be here and be a part of this. It's great getting to know you, great talking to you more. I know we've interacted a bunch just from children's birthday parties with your brother
Right,
and sister,
right.
but it's good to.
Awesome. We'll have to get y'all as a couple on too.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
absolutely. I
Haley
think she would
interview
enjoy
y'all.
that. I'll
Yeah.
try not to talk as much. And let her.
No, dude, so awesome. And yeah, can you close in prayer and don't
Absolutely.
leave without us getting a quick picture?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you.
Oh,
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord God, we just thank you so much for this time that you've allowed us to have this conversation. We thank you for the words that you give us, for the joy. We thank you for all the times that you tried to show us how to suffer well. We pray for obedience and guidance through those times, so that we can be good disciples of you, to be a good example of you, and that our example is always one of your sons, to be able to mirror to the world what it's like to have compassion and love towards our fellow man. Saint Joseph, please intercede for us and pray for us. Amen.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.